There are three areas you might moderately expect to find a plane. The first and most apparent place is in the sky. The second is at an airport, either packing or unloading goods or passengers. The third is in an airplane hangars serving for a new vacancy. If they turn up anywhere else, it tends to be a wonderment to see them. Just like old garments, disused mobile phones, and cracked down cars, and planes can become abandoned and they can direct off in some unexpected places when it happens.
Before we move further, make sure you hit that like button, and also subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you can be up to date with our interesting content.
There is a field in the town of Temple in Texas, that entertains a completely 3 abandoned warplanes and scarcely anybody knows they are there. The trees that lie in the field are solid and compact. And so if you were watching at it from the road, you'd have no idea that there were an old McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom, 2 fighter jet, and 2 Grumman F-14 Tomcat decaying beyond all the greenery. The trees might shield the old planes from you, but they don't shield them from the climate. Time and the components have damaged their weak old frames, and bushes now grow through their broken bodywork. It is known that the trio of planes once referred to the Grand Prairie Armed Forces Reserve Complex, which was based in nearby Dallas but locked down in 1998. Numerous people think the complex simply deposited to the planes after it was concluded. Although nobody has ever admitted that, a group of local amateur military historians is currently attempting to salvage the planes and gain protection for them. Perhaps they could even be refurbished one day. From a plane graveyard in the United States of America, we're driving to a plane graveyard in the United Kingdom. This one can be located on wasteland behind the Skylark Hotel, in Southend Essex, and is even more puzzling than the Texan site. There is a clue and then of the street that the planes can be found on, which is an aviation way. But the land behind the hotel has been underdeveloped for decades. In addition, nobody knows how or when the battered old planes landed there. As with the Texan site, there are 3 planes here, and reasonably, you could help us to recognize one of them. The 2 large planes are both Hawker Siddeley HS-748. It's an old type of airliner that was fabricated by Avro. The smaller plane is in such a weak state that we haven't been able to recognize it. Not all these years filling in the open has been kind to the steel birds. Without any surviving library, it's impossible to say who owns them and the hotels, as they've been there for as long as the hotel has been trading. Australian manufactured and Australian flew. This Canberra first exercised to the skies in October of 1956. For inspection flights, it made the grade with flying colours and was formally delivered over to the Royal Australian Air Force in April 1958, 18 months after it took its maiden flight, as was the case with many planes of its class. This plane saw movement when Australia became involved in the war in Vietnam, where it worked with the 2nd Squadron and took part in a variety of missions, arranging to stay clear of harm and damage. Because it came home from a war in one piece, it was reimagined for a new peacetime role. A slot was cut into the bomb doors, and the Canberra was fitted with extremely specialized cartography supplies for survey missions. For the era, it would have been recognized deeply technologically advanced. We don't know what it did to earn its current fate, but it's now mounted on poles outside a caravan park near Ranberley. Its registration number is still apparent painted onto its side 84-238. When the subject of supersonic flight has specified, the first plane that most people think about is the French Concorde. Just as great as the Concorde was, it wasn't the first passenger aircraft to accomplish the feat. That recognition goes to the Russian Tupolev Tu144, which should be sustained pride of place in the antiquity book. Alternately, here we see a Tupolev Tu144 standing neglected and unloved in the back streets of Kazan. This was once an energetic plane that carried thousands of passengers during its life. But after it was handed over to the Kazan Aviation Institute, after it was retired from service, they completely left it standing in their yard. Contradict this with the way that the French look after their Concorde aircraft in Le Bourget, where it's reliable and guarded inside a hangar. The inadequate Tupolev Tu144 has been left at the mercy of fate. There have been modern talk that it will be taken away to be restored and mounted as a museum piece. Inka Aerodrome stood in Moscow for a very prolonged time. While it was still open, it was the oldest airfield in the whole city. Planes have been in this place since 1910, when the Moscow military district precisely designated the field as an airfield. During its peak years, it was the heart of all of Russian aviation, with the headquarters of Aeroflot and MiG located adjacent by. All good things come to an end though, and it concluded for the last time in 2003, leaving a lot of fantastic old planes persisting. Unlike some of the other aircraft we've resembled, the planes in this graveyard are still in excellent condition. And there's a wide range. The Sukhoi Su-27 still resembles ready to fly. The MiG-25 Foxbat still consumes its library proudly. Moreover, the Yakovlev Yak-25 is a coat of paint away from extending back to life. The land will ultimately be used for house development, and so one by one the planes will depart. But as of right now there are still between 20 and 30 of them on position. Recognizing the F-111B Interceptor parked at a boneyard in Mojave, California to work. First, you have to get a good enough picture of it to realize that the nose is smaller than its cousin, the General Dynamics F-111 Aardvark. Secondly, you have to discover the tail number to make convinced you have the right plane. Only 7 of these ultra-rare fighters were ever established. The first 5 were damaged during testing or scrapped because they were failures. One of them, with frame number 152715, has been confirmed as a permanent resident of a different boneyard at China Lake, that leaves only frame number 152714, which was used for missile tests in 1969, and then half scrapped and stripped in 1971. Only the Hulk survives, and by process of elimination, we know that these pictures are of that Hulk. When the Royal Australian Air Force retired its complement of F-111 back in 2010, they chose to bury the planes alternately of allowing them to be scrapped. The jungle wreck site of a Japanese Mitsubishi G4M bomber, the jet is an infamous one for those who know war history. It considered something of a turning point in the battle between the United States of America and Japan during the Second World War. The Japanese knew the long barrel-shaped planes as hockey bombers, but betty by Americans. One such bomber had Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto aboard as it was hovering over the Solomon Islands on April 18, 1943. Yamamoto was a particularly significant target for the Americans, as he was the man who had sanctioned and designed the Pearl Harbor attack. The Americans had since broken their code. They decoded Yamamoto, his travel arrangements, and lay in wait for him to Lockheed P-38 Lightning, met the Admiral's plane in the air, and shot it down, sending it falling to ground in the jungle below. The pictures of the wreck horsing around the world and increased the morale of Americans, while concurrently trading a significant blow to the Japanese. Becoming a famous wreck is the least honorable way for a famous old aircraft to bow out. Therefore, by that barometer, it would reasonably be uncertain about its status as a failed restaurant in South Korea. The jumbo jet was built in 1970, and at that time was the satisfaction of the whole Pan Am fleet. It spent 29 years in the air and retired with a clean surface history in 1999. That's when a pair of prosperous South Koreans bought it and concluded it was the perfect vehicle for them to cut up and turn into a 5-star eatery. All the signs suggest that the restaurant probably looked amazing when it was brand new. However, there just weren't enough customers who wanted to eat 5-star food in such a strange place. The restaurant failed a few short years after it started, and the plane has simply been left standing with bits of kitchen and lounge still excited where the flight chairs should be. To add offense to injury, half of one of its wings has been struck off. You may have discovered of Swamp Ghosts before, but she's such a remarkable plane that there's no way we could do a video about abandoned planes without considering her. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress was shot down over Papua New Guinea during 1942, but a pilot instructed to ditch her into a swamp and emerged with his life. When he made it back to base, he could not pinpoint the situation of his plane. In addition, she was recognized as lost. The first hint that someone might have found it came in 1972 when a helicopter pilot claimed to have detected a wrecked American bomber from the sky, and the decision was finally confirmed in 2006. When a recovery team flew over it again and took photos. The rescue team transported it out of the water and took it to the wharf. But it wasn't until another 4 years later that they were finally permitted to export the plane back to the USA. After all these times in a swamp, the plane has now been famously salvaged and partially reconstructed. She's been granted pride of place at Pearl Harbor's Pacific Aviation Museum. Ditching into water is something that the Douglas SPD Dauntless has in common with Swamp Ghost. Moreover, both incidents occurred during the Second World War, but the particular conditions couldn't have been more different. Swamp Ghost went down during a battle. The Dauntless went down during a training accident, falling out of the sky above her home country and landing in the freezing waters of Lake Michigan. That was back in 1944. And that's where it waited until 2009. Investigators considered themselves lucky to have found it because they believe there to be hundreds of planes at the bottom of the lake. When it came to the surface, Dauntless was in shockingly good condition. The crash must have been a very gentle one, because if it wasn't, there's no way the wooden antenna would have outlasted the impact. It did though, and it's still in one piece, as are the wings, tail fin and propeller. She's now experiencing careful restoration, and she might even fly again one day. Subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching and see you soon.